I'm Terry Short, and I am the CEO of the Short Group, and also that's the umbrella company of Thriving Leader Collaborative. And Thriving Leader Collaborative, my colleagues are Deanna Carpenter, who's here with me live today, as well as Lisa Solis DeLong, who I believe is in the audience. And the person that makes it all happen is Chelsea Jones, who's also here participating. And probably like peeling her fingernails back right now because this live thing isn't going on. So, all right. So I'm so pleased to have Deanna with me today. And Deanna is a spiritual doula. And I'd love for her to tell a little bit about what that means. What does she do?
Thank you, Terry. One of the things I just want to say, everything always works out. And so this is perfect as it is. I just want to welcome everyone to the space, those who are here. So what is a spiritual doula? It's just something I made up. I'm just kidding. A spiritual doula. I am actually a spiritual and birth doula, as well as a sound conduit and singer-songwriter. So spiritual doula, it is a person. Honestly, a doula literally means a woman who serves. So I serve through holding spaces, creating spaces for women and men to be supported in their journey of well-being. So I do that through Kundalini Yoga. I do that through holding space for sound baths and sound healings. And I'm also a singer-songwriter, and I also work with other modalities as well. So I am, in very short, a woman who serves and helps to support and create spaces where people remember who they are and are supported in their journey to well-being.
And I can't thank you enough for the support I always feel just having Deanna on this call today. And, you know, we were all on early doing our thing and feeling rather confident that this was all would work, as Deanna says, as it's meant to. So here we are. So let's talk about ambassadorship. So when we talk about elevating the culture of your organization, that requires you being an ambassador of the culture. And so what's that mean? What's that ambassadorship mean? So we're going to jump right in, and we endeavor to impart two things, basically. One is to show you a little bit of one persona of a thriving leader, and that persona is the ambassador of the culture, and how being the ambassador of the culture is well served by practices that fall under the pillars of well-being, and those particularly, and Deanna's going to talk more about this, the pillars of self-awareness and presence. So we're going to show you how that works, and then we're going to invite you to visualize living your values. So that's what you can expect as we go. And so we have about 20 minutes of content, and here we are already 20 minutes into the hour. So that's good that's how we planned it. So we'd have 20 minutes of content and then perhaps a little Q&A. All right, so I will go first and tell you what about these 6 personas of a thriving leader. So the first is being the ambassador of the culture. Leaders set the tone for the culture of the organization, and they're expected to live the mission, vision, and values every day. So part of doing that is elevating individual contributors' strengths, honoring inclusion and equity, and really being the ambassador. So we're inviting you into this ambassadorship right here, right now. I'm going to go through the other 5 quickly. Leader is coach. So leaders who actively coach those that they serve and bring out the potential of all of those contributors. And continual change agent is the third one. So leaders who embrace change as a constant, and they lead the way in a way that normalizes change, and they lead with why, and they're vision centric, and so on and so forth. Life integrator, those are great leaders, integrate all aspects of their true self, including personal and spiritual and community, work, play, all of that. Emotionally and intuitively intelligent, great leaders harness the power of their emotional and intuitive intelligence and really honor their intuition, and they practice situational awareness as well as active listening. Last but not least on my list is the proactive and productive juggler. So, you know, that person who's got all the balls in the air, and at all times, they know which of those balls are glass and which of those balls are rubber. And so therefore, you know, where might be a little bit of slack. So let me toss it over to Deanna to talk to us about the 6 pillars of well-being.
Well, thank you, Terry. So the 6 pillars of well-being are, there are 6, you can say qualities, or as we say, pillars that can easily, they can assist and support and align with the 6 personas of a thriving leader. So the first one is self-awareness. So we've been hearing this term a lot. People talk about awareness and being aware a lot, but what does it really mean? How does that translate? So really self-awareness is about being cognizant and tuned in with one's own self, observing oneself, knowing oneself. And this can be achieved through reflection, journaling, expressing gratitude, finding things to be grateful for. There's a lot of people who have a practice of writing down what they're thankful and grateful for every day. This also helps to bring about self-awareness, and as well as astrological connections. So I think as we're seeing, Mercury is in retrograde, and we're experiencing this now. And what does that have to do with anything? Well, Mercury affects communication, contracts, technology. So when we look at just even with our life, how that was affected, knowing what's happening helps us to be aware so that when stuff turns and it shifts, we're not thrown off our rock, we're not thrown off our center, because we know that there's other things that are going on that's affecting everything. So then there's community. You know, community can be defined as surrounding yourself and being involved with like-hearted, like-minded, like-spirited, like-focused individuals who come together for a common goal, okay? And this can include, you know, praying with others, being in service to others, and also allowing others to be in service to you. I think that's the part we forget about when it comes to community. It's very reciprocal. Going on retreats, taking classes, whether online and in person, being in circles, study groups, and other cosmic and community gatherings. And then there's movement, which is one of my favorites, you know, which is really about helping to move the body and get that energy flowing, and even about embodying and we're going to talk a little bit about this during the visualization. So you can do this through yoga, through dance, walking in nature, forest bathing, qigong, as some examples. And then there's the 4th one, which is presence. So this can kind of go a couple ways. So present, being here, being now, bringing all of you to this now moment, but also what is your presence? When you come into a space, how do you show up? How do you walk into it? Do you change the space, or do you kind of flow into it? And we'll get a little bit more into that during our visualization. So some components of presence include meditation, prayer, taking quiet time, fasting from social media. I've been doing that a lot lately, and it feels really good. Breath work, being mindful, as well as visualization. Our 5th pillar of well-being is intuition. So trusting the hunches, trusting that inner knowing, trusting when you're like, there's something about this, and instead of disregarding it and just thinking that you're crazy, actually following through on that hunch and that feeling. So it's a recognition of synchronistic events. It's body signals such as chills, deja vu moments, recognizing symbols and meanings in dreams. Numerology, or finding meaning in numbers, as well as animal spirit and oracle card connections. And then last but not least is our energetic hygiene. So just as much as we have our physical hygiene, we want to make sure that our energy is nice and clean, and that we're doing and having certain practices in place that supports a clear circulation of energy, okay? And so these are basically tools and practices that we can put in place that support us with keeping our energetic hygiene nice and fresh, and, you know, attracting all of the goodness from the universe. And some of that includes breath work, as well as tapping, sound baths, a simple qigong clearing move, and chakra clearing. Okay, so I'll turn it back over to you, Terry.
All right, as you're saying that, Deanna, I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe social media is fasting from me. I don't know. Maybe it goes both ways, right?
It does.
So, all right. Well, so let's go back to the ambassador of the culture, right? So that person who is, hopefully everybody that's listening to this, that is the person who upholds the values of the organization and honors the individual strengths and contributions of those on the team, those that you serve as leader, so on and so forth. It makes me think of this, that even when I say that word contribution, I think about this story. It pops into my head every now and again. I had the privilege of being at a place called Esalen, which is a retreat center on the Big Sur coast. Hopefully some people are familiar with it. And anyway, I'm going about my business and I needed the key to my room. So I go to the front desk, as one does, to get the key to their room. And I say to the gal, may I get the key to my room? And she leans onto the counter and she says, yes. And what is your contribution? I thought to myself, like, is this like you answer that question to get the key? Like, it's such a question. And I'm like, what is my contribution? And I paused for a minute and she said, what is your contribution? What do you value doing? What do you value doing? And so I said something along the lines of, it was such a, in the moment, unexpected thing. I said, I help leaders to communicate better. That's what I do. And she said, thank you. I'm very interested to know what people value doing in their lives. And it's just, I've held it with me all this time because it really struck me. And I thought, what if we were all more concerned about that? What if not just that I was more concerned and clear about what my contribution is and how I hold certain values to be true. So when I say I help leaders communicate better, and then I think of the values of clarity and transparency and inclusion, right? And so what if we did need to answer that question every day? What if we had to answer that question like check out at the grocery store? What is your contribution? What do you value? It would be much more front and center to us, and it's not. And so we go about our days and we say, most organizations, we say, oh yes, we have values. And my clients that I coach, I'll periodically I'll say, and so what are your company values? And they'll say, wait, I got this. Wait, and then they'll maybe know half of them or something. So often it's a sign on the wall. It's a sign on the wall in the office, not something that comes to life by somebody asking you such a question, right? So how do we do that? So if I say that, clarity, transparency, inclusion are all values, how do I know I'm upholding and living those values? How do I know that what I'm saying is being inclusive? What's it look like? What's it feel like? How do I gain insight into this? And how do my observations, let's say, inform whether or not I am truly living my values? So I'm going to invite Deanna to talk a little bit about how we might do that, how we might bring that to bear on a different level.
I love that so much, Terry, because I'm just like, ooh, when people come up to me, I'm going to ask them, before I answer that, what's your contribution? I'm just going to ask them that and just to see. But you really just, the woman asking you that question was such a opportunity for reflection and self-awareness, which is one of our 6 pillars of well-being. It provided you with this opportunity to pause and become even more aware of yourself, like, wow, and what you did was reflect, what do I contribute? And from that, you were able to share. So that type of awareness is something that, is very important, not just in leadership, but also within our personal relationships. It translates and it transfers over to all of our relationships and all of our interactions. And so I want to share when I was in grad school for the first time, because I went twice to 2 different schools, I had to read this book, and it's called Leadership on the Line. It's one of my favorite books. And in one of the chapters, the author talks about this concept that it is very crucial for leaders to be able to be on the dance floor with everyone else, be involved with everything that is happening, everything that is taking place, but it's just as crucial for you to dance, but also remove yourself and go to the balcony so that you can have a better view of what's going on the dance floor. So why is this helpful? This is helpful because most of us, whether we're leaders, whether we are a part of, we're working in the organization, it's so easy for us to focus on our specific role, focus on our specific department, focus on the specific task, that we don't take the time to really remove ourselves to see how we can to see what's going on, to see how we can show up better in this role, how we can support, what we can add, where there's something missing, where there's an opportunity. So one of the things that helps us in becoming more self-aware is, of course, being in the position, being in the flow, being on the dance floor with everyone, but also taking a moment to step back and to see it from a higher perspective. Take that bird's eye view where you're able to see like, oh, okay, there's an opportunity for this. There's an opportunity for that over here. And be able to flow back and forth between the two. And yes, I will definitely do that. Denise, is Leadership on the Line, and it is by Marty Linsky and Ronald Heifetz. And it's very, very powerful book. So yes, I'll turn that back over to you, Terry.
Thank you. We'll drop the link in there. Fantastic. So here I am. I'm up on the balcony and I'm thinking to myself now, well, all right, what am I observing? What am I observing of others? So let's go back to this, my value of inclusion, let's say. And now I'm saying, oh, down there on the dance floor, what do I observe? Maybe I observe people speaking in we, they terms. Maybe I hear something that I know it bubbles up and I think that's truly a misunderstanding. That was not my intent at all. Or surely that person misunderstood what the, what the main point was or what have you. And so it's not until we pull back, as you suggested, Deanna, right? And have that bird's eye view and lean into what we're observing and what we're hearing, what we're seeing, and then have some decisions to make. So this information now that's available to me, I'm being much more self-aware and I'm aware of others and maybe their body language, what they're saying, what they're doing. Now that I have this awareness, how can I improve upon it? It's the next thing I think is that, okay, all right, I am not fulfilling my desire to be truly inclusive based on what I'm hearing others say, the confusion or the misinterpretation of my words or what have you. And so what am I going to do about that? So now I have this self-awareness and I'm suspect that that I'm not living my values to the degree that I want to. How do I lean into seeing a different path or a different way? Like we started this whole event talking about a different way to enhance your culture, to really not show up looking and assuming and observing or like your preconceived notions, observing, believing what you're observing in advance and not really leaning into what's happening. So how can we do that? How can we kind of step back and look at things a little bit differently? Have Deanna jump in now and talk to us about another one of those pillars.
Yes, so thank you, Terry. So a next pillar that we're going to lean into is presence. As yes, presence. I just want to make sure. So presence and through this visualization. So one of the things that I shared earlier on is about embodying, because that is really what Terry is leading into. Is like, you've identified what this value is and you see where there can be, but where do you go with it? What do you do from this point with this information? So if you do not mind, I would love to guide us into a short visualization to help us to begin to embody our values so that we can show up as ambassadors. It will show up even more because you're already an ambassador of the culture. The thing is that most of us aren't aware. So that word aware, we're not aware that we are ambassadors of the culture. So this will hopefully help you to be aware and also embody so that you can show up as that ambassador for your organization, for your families, and all of those relationships. So I invite you at this time to close your eyes. Just get nice and comfortable in your seat, just closing your eyes, bringing your awareness to your breath, taking a nice, deep, slow, rich inhale through the nose, filling the belly with air. And once you've reached your capacity, just hold the breath for a moment. And then exhale, slow, deep, long through the nose, emptying out the belly. So we're going to do 2 more of those breaths. Breathing in for 3. Holding the breath at the top for just 1 moment. And then exhaling out, nice, slow, emptying the belly. Do that one more time. Inhale. And then hold the breath at the top just for a moment. And then exhale, completely emptying the belly, seeing if you can get your stomach to touch your spine. Really emptying out that stomach, pushing that air out, and just keeping your eyes closed. I'm inviting you onto the dance floor of your company or the organization that you are a part of. And I want you just to kind of pay attention to what you are noticing and what you are seeing. What are you hearing? What are you feeling? Are people communicating with each other? The kind of people wallflowers off to themselves? Just really think about and presence your current company culture, organizational culture. And then I invite you to bring your awareness to yourself. What are you doing? Where are you at? What are you thinking as you observe everything that is happening around you? And even look to see, what do you have on? What are you wearing? So as you're observing everyone and everything around you, I want you to think of a value that you already embody or a value that you would like to embody. If you were the sole proprietor, the sole owner of this particular value, what would it be? And once you have that value, I want you to feel into it. How does it make you feel? And where are you feeling that value? In your heart? In your hands? Is it tickling at your throat? Is it tingling in your forehead area? Really presence the feeling of that value. Making sure you're continuing to breathe, breathing in that value. And now that you have an awareness of this value, I invite you to again return your observation to the dance floor. And from this particular vantage, where can you see that there's room for you to express this value? And as you see those pockets open, I want you to imagine yourself dancing over there, bringing all of your light, all of your uniqueness, filling up those spaces with your value. And once you've moved around the dance floor a little bit, I invite you just to take a look and see what's shifted. Are people responding to you? Have they started dancing? Or are they still against the wall? And then I invite you to see off to your right a wooden set of stairs. And I invite you to walk up those stairs to the balcony. Now, what do you see? Are there other areas where you can show up with this particular value? Do you see others who probably identify with what you value? Hence, creating this community. Gather as much information as you can from this balcony perspective. And once you've made your observations, I invite you to walk back down the stairs onto the dance floor and continue your dance again. Impacting change with your value in your own way, your unique way. And once you're ready to return back to this moment, I invite you to slowly open your eyes. Just kind of move the body a little bit. Thank you. I'll turn it over to you, Terry.
Fantastic. Here's what I thought. I love that. And I think to myself, why don't we do that? That's such an activity more often in our days, right? And when I was doing that, Deanna, the value I chose was kindness. And when I got back to the dance floor, I could feel myself exuding kindness and others relating to that, as you were saying. And, even in dance, like coming closer to me and, being in relationship to that kindness. When I went back on the balcony, I still felt that there were corners of the room or pockets that I hadn't touched. And so that's the whole point, is that I challenge myself to be more aware. Why is that? If let's say it's the inclusion, kindness, any of the values that I've mentioned previously, when I'm truly showing up, exuding that value, is it to everyone? Is it to the usual suspects and those that are my, sort of my people and I'm more comfortable around? Or am I exuding it to everyone? And that's the challenge. And when we talk about really changing a culture and uplifting a culture, it's that kind of effort, particularly by the leaders, to set the tone, to be the ambassadors, and to set the tone in that manner so that all else follows. And yeah, and they set that tone. I wanted you to share the story that you talked about the other day about your choice to set the tone in an organization that you were participating in, and how that played out.
Yes, and I'm so grateful that you emphasize that this is something that we can do at different points throughout the day, and I hope that you will, because it does give us that perspective, and it shows us, like you said, where for the example you use, where you can be more kind. So I want to say a few years ago, I had a company had rehired me to work with them as a contract writer. And it had been about 3 or 4 years since I had last worked with them. So they had grown exponentially. They actually had a writing team. They just had their systems in place. But one of the things I kept hearing and I saw, from the first day that, I got there, was that people were stressed out. People were stressed because with growth, and they were still trying to figure out the best way to handle this rapid growth that was taking place. And so a lot of the workers, the writers in particular, were overworked. You could just see it in people. They were just zoomed in on their laptop. People hardly interacted with each other. It was a really interesting situation. And so I went home with that information. And the next day when I got up, I said, I'm going to represent and I'm going to hold the space and be the value of joy. And I literally felt it, which was why I did that during the visualization, because it's one thing to say, oh, I'm going to be joy. But when you start to feel it, you can always come back to that as it's your anchor point, and you can exude that energy. You can tap into that feeling of it. So when you walk into the space, you're aware of what it feels like. And from that feeling, it will be exuded out. So I said, I'm going to represent joy. So I felt it in my body. I imagined myself before I went into the office, like walking around, and I just imagined joy just emanating and just hitting everybody. And I did this before I went into the office. And so when I got to the office, I walked in like, good morning, everybody. Everybody's like, hi, and I just kept holding that space. And what was really interesting was by, I want to say lunch or a little shortly thereafter, someone decided to turn on their music. And then next thing you know, people started moving. And then next thing you know, someone else mentioned like, oh man, let's go for a walk. And then like people started like coming out of their silos, their own individual shells, and started communicating with each other. And so then the next day I had an idea to have an intention bag where I put all these different qualities, and I would go around the office and people picked an intention, and that was what they focused on for the day. And so I just was myself. I said, I'm going to be the value of joy, and people felt it. It was very contagious. It was infectious. People feel it when you set that intention or that value. And so eventually we established weekly Friday dances for 30 minutes on Fridays. We would dance. We kept the intention going each day, where we would pick an intention, and that's what we focused on. And it really helped shift. We became more cohesive. It became a true community. And even though it wasn't just the writing team or the social media team, all of the teams started to work together because someone decided to hold the space for joy. And so it also, what was funny about that too, is that I didn't announce it. I didn't go into the office like, hey, y'all, I set this intention for joy. No, it was just me allowing that to exude from myself. And it works. It truly, truly, truly works. And it helped change a culture, and it brought about a sense of cohesion and levity and fun that was missing from this job. So
yeah, I love it. I love it. So many things wrapped up there. Thank you for sharing that. One is that first thing that comes to my mind is one person can make that difference, right? And you decided and you owned it. It's oftentimes I hear people say, well, I'm not the problem with the culture here. It's the C-suite or here or there, what have you. And so you owned it. You said, you were newly back, so clearly you weren't causing the disconnect that was being experienced, right? And so you owned it, and you said, I'm going to show up, and it's going to be like this. I'm going to exude this. And that's that, you did that self-awareness, that reflection. You were present. You centered yourself on what was important to you. One could easily swap out intention with value. Like when you said you had the bag of intention, the bag of values that exist in your organization right here, right now. Like, don't reinvent the wheel. Start with what you have and take one value a week, one value a month, one value a day, and own it and exude it yourself. So tap into what that looks and feels like and show up exuding it, and then invite others into that space. And it'll happen. It'll happen. It'll elevate your culture to have that kind of a laser focus on individual values. So thank you so much for sharing that story. Well, this concludes our presentation. If had we been able to really get the LinkedIn Live, we're gonna get this. We are gonna nail this at some point. Had we been able to, we would have engaged in conversation, but since it didn't turn out that way, and this will end up being a recording for people to respond to and such, I want to wrap up with a few bits of information. And one is about the retreats that Deanna and Lisa and Chelsea and I put on. So we had a fabulous one in March. And we have great information to share about that one on our website, some of the things that the people said. And upcoming one in July, so it's in Estes Park, Colorado, July 14th to 17th. And it's good that we're having this right now because our $200 off expires on May 31st. And I think Chelsea's dropping some information into the chat. We have an opportunity for a few people to have a scholarship through some of the sponsors that we've collected, sponsorships. So direct message one of us, and Chelsea, if you could please put some information on how to contact us in there as well. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up straight away, is that our retreat in October in Costa Rica, the organization themselves is offering the first 10 people who sign up by June 7th will be put into a drawing, and 2 people will win free airfare, which, like, that's super cool. Additionally, the first 5 get a $100 spa credit. So lots of good stuff going on there. And so why is that important? So what those retreats are the immersion, like, let's all gather together and let's have an immersive experience in what we coach. And that is what we outlined today. Those 6 pillars of well-being married to the 6 personas of a thriving leader. And that the greater that overlap, the more joy. It's where the joy is. That's where people thrive. So hopefully you've enjoyed our stories and the visualization. Thank you so much, Deanna, for walking us through that and giving you some practices that you can bring into your workplace. So we are very grateful. Chelsea has put, please save the chat. Click on the 3 little buttons to save the chat so that you have that if you're participating. And we're grateful for everyone who made it here from LinkedIn Live and those of you who are listening to the recording. Thank you.
Thank you.